How to read a book a week. As cliche as it sounds, we all know that people who read succeed. I mean, look at the numbers 85% of millionaires read at least 2 books per month, while 25% of the entire American population hasn't even read a single book all of last year. So, what's the best way to actually get yourself to start reading and at a good pace so that you can succeed too? Well, you could basically guarantee that you will read a book a week by taking advantage of 3 psychological tricks. The first is something called implementation intention, basically setting an appointment. See, the biggest problem is when it comes to reading is actually getting started. So many people buy books that they're interested in and say to themselves, oh, I'll definitely read this. And guess what? The book just sit there on the shelf, never to be touched again. By physically writing down the time and place of when you start reading a book, you're essentially setting up an appointment to do so. And think about it. We don't really miss our appointments. When was the last time you completely skipped a job interview or a visit to your doctor? Sure, you might have to be late, but when you set an appointment, you know that you have to show up and you usually do. The second psychological trick, reading a book a week, is to use what's called chunking, basically breaking down a big task into smaller ones. One of the bad reasons people start reading books and never finish is because the task seems way too big. It feels like we can't do it. Just take a look at the average nonfiction book, which is about 200 pages long. How long do you think it takes to read that entire thing in one sitting? You're probably thinking 10, 15 hours maybe? Maybe. Well, in reality, the average human can read the 200-page book in about 5 hours, which means you really only have to spend 45 minutes a day reading, which probably accounts to just a chapter or two. So instead of saying, okay, I'm gonna read tomorrow right out of lunch at home, it's much more effective to say, okay, I'll read the next chapter tomorrow after lunch at home. When you break down a book to its chapters and even further to its subsections, which most non-fiction books have, then your brain will no longer see it as a huge obstacle that you have to overcome. Instead of thinking, oh my god, is it gonna take forever? You will think, that's easy, I could definitely do that. And finally, the last psychological trick to reading a book a week is to use what's called temptation bundling. Basically, taking a task that you don't enjoy that much and is turning it to something you really enjoy. For example, you could tell yourself that after every chapter or subsection of the chapter you read, you're gonna reward yourself with the next episode or the next segment of that TV show you love watching. By doing this just a couple of times, it will actually just a couple of times it will actually start to feel good to read because your brain will start to associate it with something very pleasurable. It's gonna think, wow, every time I read the chapter or subsection, I feel great after. Now, what you might find is that you actually start to read more chapters than you need. By combining all of these 3 tricks, you will end up with something like this. Okay, tomorrow after lunch at home, I'll read the next chapter of chapter of my book, and for every chapter I read, I get to watch the next segment of the new episode of Game of Thrones. Try this out, and I guarantee that you'll find yourself reading a lot more.